Welcome to Spectrum Perspectives, real talk with parents, professionals, and autism advocates. With your host, Cindy Gellermini.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cindy Gellermini, and I'm the host of Spectrum Perspectives. If you're new to the podcast, here's a little intro into who I am and what I do. I'm the mom of 4, and my son Robbie had profound autism. He was completely nonverbal. He had seizures and neuropathy. I live in New Jersey, where we have the highest amount of autism in the country. 1 in 32 kids are being diagnosed. I have a YouTube channel called Robbie and Me Autism Reality. It features lots of videos of Robbie where I followed him around and tried to share his journey with everyone. I had no idea that it would end when he suddenly had a seizure in his sleep. So in his memory, about a year later, I started to write stories about a little penguin with autism. You can visit my website and visit my YouTube channel to find out the whole story about the penguins. We were interviewed on the Today Show last year, and you can see all those videos on my YouTube channel. When I wrote the children's books, I told stories about my son Robbie when he was a little boy. And there's 12 chapters. There's 4 chapters in 3 different books. And at the end of every chapter, I do a mom's minute where I speak to the adults and I explain to them what happened in each chapter. And each chapter will teach different aspects about autism. You'll learn about eating issues, sleeping issues, running away, which is called eloping, stimming, all different aspects about autism, but children and adults will learn about it in a really cute and funny way in a children's book series. I also did all of the illustration. It's a great teaching tool for teachers to use in the classroom to teach students about their other fellow students that may have autism. It's also great for parents to read to siblings if you have a kid that's newly been diagnosed. It's just a great teaching tool for children and adults to learn about autism. So after I was on the Today Show last year, I did a lot of interviews on TV, radio, podcasts, and I decided to start interviewing other moms about their kids with autism as well, because I wanted to just continue to help other families that are coming along behind us and just help them however I could. The first 6 interviews I did were so good on my YouTube channel, I decided I really need to turn this into a podcast. So you can view the video versions on my YouTube channel. You can listen to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, all the typical venues for podcasts. And today I will be interviewing someone that you may know of already, that is an autism mom, who's also an author, who also is out there in social media world, putting themselves out there, also trying to help other parents of autistic kids. So I hope you enjoy our interview today. And if you'd like to purchase the books, you can visit my website, which is called robbiesworldbook.com. And you'll also find all the links to everything that you need to know about us and what we do. You'll find out about my foundation and how we help other families. So that's it. And I hope you enjoy the interview. Stay tuned. Hi, everybody. This is Cindy with another episode of Spectrum Perspectives. And today I have a special guest. Kate Swenson is here, and some of you may know her from Finding Cooper's Voice. Hi, Kate. Welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
It's nice to have you. So I've interviewed a couple of, what do we call you, an influencer? You're like the autism moms on Facebook and Instagram. And I'm like, what title do we give you for that? I don't even know. It's like, you're an autism mom.
I know. I like writer. Because the other ones feel so like, I don't know, not me.
I know. Well, influencer, I think of like, cute girls in their 20s with their big hats that like to show off their fashion every day. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not really.
I know. I want to be them, but I have a messy house and 4 kids. So
yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I want to get to you being a writer, because I want to get to you have a book that's coming out too, but I want to get to how you started doing all your blogging and all that kind of stuff. But let's start the interview the same way I ask everybody. We'll go back to the beginning. I know you have 4 kids. Cooper's the oldest. How old is Coop?
11.
11. Okay. So he's your first child. So let's talk about when you were pregnant with him. Were there any kind of red flags? Did the doctors find anything on an ultrasound and tell you anything was going on, or no?
Nope. Had a very, very good pregnancy. I actually had a miscarriage right before Cooper, which I talk a lot about in my book because it really kind of changed me. It changed who I was as a young, first time blissfully unaware mom. And then got pregnant with Cooper right away after, had a great pregnancy, but a really difficult birth. First child, and he was big. He was a big boy, 9 pounds. And I go, into this a lot about how when he was born, everyone told me about that first cry, it's so powerful. And I kept waiting for it and waiting for it, and it never came. He didn't need to be intubated, but he had a tough way out. And from the first seconds I looked down at him, he definitely seemed a little lost and confused, and just kind of like, where am I and what has happened? Yeah.
Yeah. But as a first time mom, you might think, oh, do all babies come out like that? Like they just came out of my womb. Maybe they're confused. I don't know. Right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, definitely first time mom. But I knew, and I faced a lot of those challenges with, doctors saying, you are a first time mom, calm down.
Mhm.
But I had spent a lot of time around children, babysitting, nannying. Children were my passion. And I could tell right away that he was just a little lost here. He was like, I'm not sure how to do this eating thing or this sleeping thing or this content thing. So definitely from day one, it was like, what's going on here?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was my next question about his development. Was he on time with crawling and walking and talking, all that stuff?
Yep. So that's, another autism I think can be so confusing and different for every child. Cooper met all physical milestones on time or early until jumping. Jumping was the first red flag where a doctor was like, what do you mean he's not jumping yet? And I was like, I didn't know. But his big give or tell was he never babbled. Even at 11, he still never babbled. And he has a super severe apraxia. So that's why eating was so challenging and why making sounds even today is challenging for him.
Wait, hold on. So whenever moms throw out these terms, I make them back up for people that are listening that don't know anything. What is apraxia?
So it's essentially, I like to describe things really simply. So apraxia is when the motor pathways from the brain, so think about there's pathways in your brain that go to your fingers and your mouth and your toes, and they make everything move. His pathways are telling his mouth to move and his fingers to move, but it doesn't listen. I like to say there's potholes in those roads. So his mind thinks he's doing it, but it's not coming out, or he's not holding the pencil right. And that's why jumping was so hard, because there's a bunch, I won't go into it, but there's a bunch of different kinds of apraxia. It can just affect speech or the whole body. He has the whole body one.
Interesting. Okay, so did he ever speak any words when he was little?
Oh gosh, no. He didn't say his first, or even attempt. Attempt is the important. He didn't really even attempt till age 8. Now he has 25 or so words, but they'd be hard for you to understand. But like, I know that like when he says, that's toast, peanut butter toast, obviously.
Right. As his mom, right. Yeah,
Yep.
That's cute. So yeah, because some kids have a few words and then they lose it. That happened to my son. He only used words when he was stressed. Like if I dropped him off in the nursery and went to go work out, like normally a kid is going to cry for his mama, that would be kind of the only time I would hear the words. And then about 3 months went by and I'm like, I don't think I've heard him use his words in a long time. So yeah, so it had disappeared, but I can't pinpoint, the actual time. So
I've done a lot of talking about, I like to compare and contrast when I talk about things, because I think it paints a really nice picture. And then there's the moms where their kids have the words and lose them. And then there's me that's never heard the words. And it's like, the other one is so foreign, and they're both so uniquely challenging and heartbreaking.
Yeah. But he used them so infrequently that it wasn't like I got used to him speaking and then it's like all of a sudden it was gone. It was like, I heard him like, very rarely anyway. So yeah. So then when did you find out that he was autistic? How was he diagnosed and when? How old?
So I started bringing really big red flags to our pediatrician early on, because Cooper, he never slept longer than 45 minutes at a time for years. I mean, it was fall asleep, wake up, fall asleep, wake up. Stopped eating all but like 3 foods, had a lot of chronic ear infections, constipation, really all the classic stuff, had no imaginative play, really rigid, really intensely rigid. flappy, super happy flappies that we'd always say, didn't sit. So I was the one bringing the concerns all the time to our pediatrician, and she was a lovely woman, and but we were very rural, and she kept saying, first time mom, boys are late bloomers, relax.
Mhm,
But we did start with this with early intervention, thankfully, because I pushed so dang hard, but
mhm.
nothing really good came of it because it was just it wasn't the right fit quite yet. So we ended up I made the appointment, had a 9-month wait for the diagnosis, ended up going, and right away classic autism.
Right.
And he was 3 months shy of 4, but Cooper could have been diagnosed much younger.
Yeah. Wow. I'm surprised it's that late. I thought you were going to say he was like 18 months or 2 years
Yeah.
old. Wow. Almost 4. Geez. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I guess you were seeing the signs because you had nannied and all that kind of stuff. I think it's hard for first time parents because they have no clue, if their kids are delayed or what's going on.
Well, I mean, it was more than the delays that were telling were his rigidity. And I wouldn't even have known that word with a
Mhm.
child, before Cooper, or if my other kids had been born first. The story I always tell is like, the early interventionists or the preschool teachers like stack the blocks, and he's like, I mean, like he wasn't going to stack
Yes.
those blocks even if
Right.
you paid him, he
Right.
wasn't going to go on the slide. And I have a lot of, just memories of like, we lived in a rural area, beautiful out in the country, and we'd bring him outside. We had a play set and a sandbox and all this stuff. And he would just look at it like it was just foreign objects. He didn't
Mhm.
know what to do, and became really obsessed with the television at 9 months old. And
Yeah.
getting him away from that was really hard. So more than, I won't say that I knew it was autism, but more than the classic autism signs, it was these other things that
Hmm.
just made life harder for him.
Yeah. Were you familiar with autism? Had you heard of it before?
Nope. So if I had, it didn't ring a bell
Didn't
or
register.
anything.
Yeah.
My story is I worked for a huge nonprofit, and every week we would have these things called lunch and learns, and you'd go and you'd learn about adoption or financial counseling or homelessness or whatever it may be. And I was sitting there one day just trying to get out of work, eating my sandwich, minding my own business, and the presenter was like, "I'm going to tell you about this autism thing." And every thing that she said described my son, and my face was red, and I was really uncomfortable, and I wanted to get out of there quietly because I didn't want anyone to know that I had just figured out that my son was autistic.
Hmm.
And I stood up really forcefully in my chair, hit the wall, and like everyone stared at me, and I was like holding back tears, and I ran out, and I spent the rest of the day on my computer, convincing myself it wasn't autism.
Mm.
And that was really the start for me.
Wow. So you mentioned, okay, so when he was 4, he was in preschool?
So he was doing where he was set to start preschool at 4, because
Oh,
again we
okay.
live really rural, so it wasn't like I'm in a metro now, it's different, and this was also many years ago. So back then he was going to start in the school district at 4. He was already doing speech and OT, and he was doing some other kinds of services, not the right services, like it was called a speech and language clinic, but there were things that we were doing everything we could with this where we were, geographically. And then once we got his diagnosis, we actually moved where we are now, which is a metro, because he needed more. And it's the best decision we ever made. It was hard, but since then he's been in services since then.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm just wondering if so he didn't go to school before he turned 4. He didn't go to any kind of
Nope,
preschool
he
or
started
anything.
a 4K and then an autism day program at 4.
How did you get him the speech and everything ahead of time?
Well, he had no words. I mean, they're not even
Yeah.
so
I
getting
mean,
it was
well, the
really easy.
pediatrician was telling you that there was nothing wrong. So I'm just wondering how you didn't do it. Did you do it through the pediatrician? How did you even find a speech therapist?
We went private, so we just went to a private place, and
Mhm.
that's another, that's a misconception with people outside of our world, is if you don't have a diagnosis, it's not covered by insurance.
Right.
And we were a very young, newly married, no money family, so we still to this day, 11 years later, talk about those credit card bills, the decision, we put speech and OT on them because and they're expensive, but we
Mhm.
had to do it.
Right. Right. Okay, so then you get the official diagnosis and you moved. And so now where did he go? Was he in public school? He's in a private school?
Yep. So he was in our public, it was called a 4K autism program. He was in that half days, and then he went to it's called day treatment, but essentially what it is he went to this autism center and he had lunch and practice sitting and practice potty training. It was a great program. So he did that up until kindergarten, the half days at both. And then we tried kindergarten. I knew it wasn't the right decision. Again, I felt a lot of pressure as a mom to follow the typical path that everyone follows. Even though he was in an autism program in the kindergarten, I knew it was not the right setting. We went and he lasted about 6 months. And then I pulled him and we just did therapies outside of school.
Oh, so you just pulled him out of school altogether in kindergarten?
Yeah. Well, they were essentially kicking him out anyways. It was just a really hard, awful time. I always say the hardest battle you will ever face is with your school districts. It's just such a huge, tough entity, and you're probably not going to win.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, we have a school here that's specifically for autistic kids. And when Robbie turned 3, the day he turned 3, I put him on a bus and sent him off to that school. And the more I talk to moms in other states, they just don't have what I have here, and it's changed though over the years because it's very expensive for school districts to send them to that school. And a lot of districts are now keeping their kids in district and setting up their own, inclusion class in the public school and that kind of stuff because it's cheaper for them.
That's what we're doing now.
So,
yep.
Yeah. And I also am talking to other moms that they have to get the therapist on their own to come to the house and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, he got all this stuff at school. I didn't have to do anything.
Well, that's the thing. Did you ever do Partners in Policymaking?
No.
Have you heard of that? It's a fantastic
I've heard of it.
course. Yeah, fantastic. So it's like a year-long course that parents and adult advocates can take to learn about how to advocate best for our kids. And the things that I learned about like the regional disparities in services between states, I mean, even counties, it's unbelievable. And I know that we were lucky that we were able to move our jobs and move for Cooper, but a lot of families can't do that. So I would never, no one would ever expect a family to do that. We were able to, but I can't imagine where we would be if we would have stayed and not got him the supports that he needed personally.
Yeah. There's a few moms I've interviewed already that have moved for that reason to other states, even just to get their kids the services.
I'm in Minnesota and we're a top-notch state, and Wisconsin is not for resources and federal supports and services, things like that. So they'll move right over. Just pop on over to Minnesota.
Oh, so you moved to a whole different state then?
No, we didn't.
You didn't. Oh, but people do. They come over from. Got it.
Yep.
Got it. Okay, so we're at 5 years old at this time. So when I know he goes to school now, so how long did you have him home before you started putting him in school?
So he did full days of therapy. That was essentially his school. He wasn't working on school type subjects, but he was working on safety and, all those different things. And then when COVID hit, so 2 years ago, we never ever thought his center would close. I mean, we never thought public school would close, right? But then his center closed too. And we went months without services. Then a therapist came to our house. And that wasn't the right setting for Cooper. He wants to go somewhere, and
yes,
this is his home, his safe space. And it was just a really hard time. And his center made some changes where they were not going to take these super severe kids back. It was just more staffing, more liability. And we really felt like we had nowhere to go. We were scared to death. I felt like I was back as that mom of that 5-year-old all over again. And called the school district, and I had grown and changed, and I was like, here's the deal. This is my Cooper, and he, he's a spirited young boy, and laid it all out for them. And they're like, let's give it a try. And he's been in 4th grade and 5th grade now and thriving, loving school. It's like a weight has been lifted.
Wow.
Yeah.
In a regular ed 4th and 5th grade class, or he's
no, he's in a classroom with 5 peers. It's a level 3 setting. So wonderful teacher, paras. But this year he has started going back into the classroom, and he's been doing gym, which he loves, and some of the specials with his 5th grade peers. And I was very scared because I'm scared of everything. And he loves it. It's been a great move for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's only been 2 years that he's been in there. Huh. Okay, so now he's not your only child, so all along you're taking him, to his program or whatever, right? But meanwhile, you're having more babies.
Lots more. Yeah. I have a 9-year-old. His name
Mhm,
is Sawyer.
mhm,
And then I have a 3-year-old. His name is Harbor.
mhm.
And then a baby. And we're done.
Yeah, well, like it was boy, 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 girl, and when I saw the girl, I said, "Oh, she's done."
Yep. And I'm 30. I'm gonna be 39 in a couple weeks, and we're feeling our age. We're feeling like we just were laughing. We're like, we haven't slept for 11 years. We're
Yeah,
like, we're ready now. We're ready for that sleep thing to
yeah.
happen.
How is his sleeping now? He still doesn't sleep well, or?
He sleeps much better. Huge gains. He's doing so great. So Cooper loves napping and going to bed. He may wake up early, so he may have a 4 a.m. wake up, but he's able to safely watch his iPad and hang out till the rest of us get up, has been a huge step in development. I feel like the
Mhm.
next half of my life has started.
Right, right. Have you medicated him at all to try to get him to sleep, or no? This just happened naturally.
So over the years, we've tried some different things with medications, but let's just say if just for a number, the last 5 years or so, he's always fallen asleep and stayed asleep for a period of time, but then woke up early. So
Right.
our problem was always kind of different than the intermittent wake ups. So it was like we could give him something to sleep, but it would wear off by the time
Yeah,
he was
don't
ready.
everything only lasts like 4 hours.
Yeah, so it never really mattered for him.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I just heard someone speaking recently, I think on Clubhouse or something, and they were a sleep expert, and I'm like, I have to track this person down and get them on the show to talk about the autistic brain and why they don't sleep. I would love
So
to know
hard.
why. Yeah.
I think the sleep deprivation over the years, because we had a whole maybe 2 years where he started every day at 3 a.m.
Mhm.
And it was like running at 3 a.m., going.
Yes, and it's always 3 a.m. Why is it 3
It's
a.m.? I don't
always 3
understand.
a.m. And I worked full time then, and I wouldn't leave. Like I would put, let's just say I'd put him on the bus at 8:30, and I would be at my desk by 9, and I'd already lived a whole day. Like I was eating lunch,
Mhm.
just just loony. I was like, those were hard, isolating, hard times.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a big problem that people don't understand and know about. That's a behind the scenes thing, is that you're severely sleep deprived for years,
Yeah, it's
for
used as
years.
torture. I always say sleep deprivation is used as torture.
Exactly, exactly. So let's get to all the things that you do now. So um, you're a writer, and I can tell by when I just by seeing like your Facebook posts and stuff, I'm like, she's definitely a writer. How long have you been writing?
Well, I started my blog when Cooper was 2, just because I needed a place to very privately, quietly, I just needed some place to write down all these feelings that I was having. My
Mhm.
writing was terrible. When I look back on it, it was just awful and icky and awful. I would say I really turned my passion to writing maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Mhm.
Really fell in
Mhm.
love with it as a way of therapy and a way to paint a picture of this confusing thing that anyone in their home can read and take in and hopefully understand.
Mhm. And then were people following your blog? Like,
No, like 3 people. My mom, my no, I didn't want anyone to, so I wasn't doing it. So that's the funny part, maybe misconception about me is I've never done any of this to get a following. I actually never thought anyone would follow me. So a lot of my writing in the beginning was really raw because I assumed no one would ever read it.
right.
I started my Facebook page right before Harbor. I got pregnant with Harbor, and he's 3 now, so it's about 4.5 years old.
Mhm.
And really naively just started holding up my phone and making videos because it was faster than writing for me. I could just get out this
Right.
feeling I was having, get to work, take care of my kids, and never expected to have a following like I do now.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and who do you think follows you more, Instagram or Facebook? Those are your two
Oh, I have 900,000 between the two, so it's like 760 to 130 Facebook.
right. Okay.
Because
Yeah.
Facebook's more writing focused. I mean, Instagram's really pretty pictures, I think.
True, but it's just, but I'm just curious how you got so many followers. So for me, I started with YouTube, and it was
So
kind of the same thing. It was probably gosh, almost 8 or 10 years ago, I think I started. And it was because we put Robbie in a group home, which I never wanted to do. It was not the plan. It was recommended to me that he needed that kind of care because he was making himself sick every weekend. Every weekend and every holiday he was vomiting to the point where he would have seizures brought on by the stress. And I kept a calendar, for 6 months and realized it was every time he was off of school, he was making himself sick. And then I said, wow, I bet if he could live in a residential school, he'd be really happy. He was a teenager at this point. Okay. It's like 18, 19 years old. And I'm like, if he was like his siblings, he'd be in college now. He wouldn't be living with us anymore. And that's really, I felt that's what he wanted. He wanted to live with his peers in his own environment and not hang out with his mom all the time, Yes.
So someone told me that years ago, and I was like, they're like, there'll come a time when Cooper probably won't want to live with you anymore. And I remember being like,
it's like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
I know. I was like, how dare you? I know. Yeah. I was like, what do you mean you don't want to live with your mommy anymore? And it took the third time in an ambulance to the hospital. And I was sitting there looking at him sleeping in his hospital bed that I said, oh my God, he doesn't want to live with us anymore. And I'm being selfish, keeping him home with me. And it's taking him getting violently ill to get through to me that this is what he wants. So anyway, long story short, I put him in the group home and they had no idea what they were doing. They were completely unprepared for him. They had no training. They had never dealt with somebody with autism before. Everybody in the group homes were old. They were, in their 50s in wheelchairs and moving in slow motion. And then you bring this 20-year-old running back and forth who's upset because they don't understand him because he can't talk. So he'll pick up a chair, throw it across the room. So then they call the police. It was just, they took him out in handcuffs. It was a disaster. And so I didn't want to keep repeating myself to everyone, telling them what happened, right? So I did the same thing. I just kind of turned my phone on the camera and I would just talk into it. And I'm like, I'll just throw it up on YouTube. And if my friends and family want to watch it, let them watch it. And then you start getting all these followers. I'm like, I have no idea how I'm getting all these followers. Who are these people?
They're me and you. They're the moms that are hidden in their homes trying to figure out this super confusing thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I would hear from people like in Wisconsin that are like, your son is just like my son. I thought we were the only ones, I didn't know. Right. You start hearing.
That's why I started.
Yeah. And I can only imagine the stories that you probably hear, good things and heartbreaking things, like from people with special needs that would say to me, I wish my mother loved me the way you loved your son. And to hear that they feel rejected by their own parents, that's heartbreaking. Right. Yeah. But also to hear the good stuff, though, from other parents or people that got a job where they're going to work as an aide and they've never worked with anybody autistic. So they Google it. Right. And then they found me and they're like, oh, and then they fall in love with Robbie and they're like, now I can't wait to start my job. And then they would learn just by watching me with him, like I would figure things out even on my own. Like when I took him shopping, I realized like he would plop on the floor and stuff, but if I put his hands on the cart, it sort of grounded him and he liked to hold the cart and kind of push it, and I kind of learned, I didn't realize it until I actually watched myself on my videos. I'm like, wait a minute, I think that really helps. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. So but I started, Robbie's a lot older. I'm 20 years ahead of you with all this, with the autism. So it's interesting for me to listen to. Yeah. So anyway, so when I watch you and I see what you're doing, I'm like, yes, I totally get her because I have 4 kids too. And I understand kind of how you start. And it's like, you just want to put your feelings out there and just kind of talk about what's going on, not intending for anybody to follow. And before you know it, you've got all these people following you. But I didn't know that mine was going to end with my son's memorial service. I had no idea that it would ever end. So then I kind of took a break for a while. And then I wrote my children's books. And before they came out last year, I said, I need to get back in the loop because I've been out of the autism land for a while. Because not only
how long has it been?
My son wasn't in he wasn't in school for autistic kids anymore. You know what I mean? He was living in a group home and going to a day program and stuff. So I didn't need to learn about autism. I didn't need to be in support groups. I didn't need any, like, I don't need to learn about autism. I live it. Yeah. Like when April comes around, Autism Awareness Month, I'm like, oh, trust me, we're aware. We live it.
Yes.
We live it
every day of the year. Yeah.
So anyway, I said I need to get back in the loop. And my daughter's friend who does my hair, her son is autistic. And she told me, she says, you have to follow Finding Cooper's Voice. So that's how I found you, through my hairdresser, because her son is autistic too. Okay, that's it for part 1. Be sure to tune in for part 2. I hope you enjoyed listening and it helped you gain a new perspective. If you're interested in buying our book series, Robbie's World and His Spectrum of Adventures, the link will be in our episode description, as well as my Instagram and Facebook pages. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like more content, please be sure to hit that like button, follow us, and don't forget to leave us a great review. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 of today's episode. Be sure to join us again next time to hear the second half of the interview on Spectrum Perspectives.